Hey guys, Borderlands 2 2019 DLC released earlier this week called Commander Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary. In this DLC, they added a new high-tier loot called Effervescent, and this past week, I've been making a lot of videos showing you guys how to get some of this Effervescent gear. At this point, we have found a lot of the Effervescent gear and uncovered the locations where to get it, but there's one more that I haven't showed you guys, and it's an SMG. Here it is right here. It's called Nirvana. It's an Effervescent Malawon SMG, and it's always incendiary. It's got a slightly reduced bullet damage and accuracy, but it's got increased magazine size, elemental damage, and elemental chance. The one I found came with a bayonet, and it has a 50% melee damage. This has a red flavor text that says, "Look, life's a bitch, and get over it, burn something to the ground." So far, I haven't seen anyone really know what this means. People were speculating that maybe it's a quote from Nirvana, the band, or a lyric, but I couldn't find anything along those lines. To me, it sounds like a line from a movie, but again, we haven't found anything that matches it. This Effervescent Nirvana is a reskin of the legendary Hellfire, and the Hellfire is mostly found in Frostburn Canyon from Scorch. So let's talk about where you can get this Effervescent Nirvana. This thing is tough to get, and I believe it is one of the hardest effervescent weapons to obtain. And what I mean by tough is that it's very time consuming. You have to get this weapon to drop from one of these badasses. There's one enemy that it will drop from, but they have different names depending on what mode you're in. If you're on normal mode, they're going to be called Infected Badass Sprouts. If you're playing on True Vault Hunter or Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, then they're going to be called Infected Badass Saplings. In this DLC, there are two areas where these enemies spawn, and they're pretty large areas, but there's one area in particular that I believe is going to be the best farming if you're trying to get this gun. The first area I'm going to show you I don't think is as good, but it might work for you guys. It's in the Dahl Abandon. You need to come to this area right here. There's going to be a large area full of infected enemies. What I would recommend is as soon as you get to the entrance, don't go in, just stand right here. It's going to trigger all the enemies to spawn in, and if you stay right here, they're going to fight with themselves, and that will keep them distracted and not attacking you, and meanwhile you can stand here and just pick off the different enemies, and you can identify the little badasses around the area. There will be some that spawn in right here in this immediate area. Also, regarding these particular badasses, some of them are not badasses. They're just the regular version, and the badass versions are not as common. So you're going to get some random enemies in this area, but you can guarantee yourself to get 4 of these sprouts or saplings if you move all the way to the back. Once you get back here, it will always trigger this necrotizing badass to spawn in, and then there's a trick to getting the sprouts or saplings to spawn in. There's going to be these infected pods that are going to sprout from the plants in the ceiling, and as long as you don't damage them, it will drop a sapling or a sprout, and sometimes it will drop one of the badass versions. You can see these infected pods starting to grow, and when they reach full maturity, yeah, they're gonna bust open and spit out one of those little guys. So you'll always get 4 pods growing on the ceiling back here, and again, as long as you don't damage them, it will spit out 4 of these infected enemies. Majority of the time, they're just gonna be regular infected enemies, but sometimes they will be the badasses, and sometimes I even get 2 badasses out of the 4. So I like to leave that giant guy alive so that the smaller enemies and him fight with each other and keep each other distracted and keep them from attacking me, and then I can just sit there and pick off the little infected guys. So this is the first place that you can farm, and if you don't get the drop, you can quit out of the game. It will put you back at that respawn point and the catch a ride station. You can drive over and repeat the process. I have seen people get the gun from this location. Again, it's very difficult. It's a very rare drop. It's got to be the rarest effervescent in the game. It's hard to say how many tries it might take to get the gun from this location. I tried between 20 and 30 times, still didn't get it, so you might be going for a while trying to get this thing to drop. The other farming location and where this gun has dropped for people is in the Burrows. There's a lot of pods on the ceilings in this location right here, and then there's a worm arena that I think is way better than this part right here. I'll show you guys that in a moment. But if you spawn into the Burrows in this location right here, there's another location I think is better. But this location, you can just walk up and look down, and there will be some of these guys spawning in. As long as you don't jump down into that area, you can just let those enemies attack each other, and you can stand back and just pick them off and not have to get mixed up with them. Past that small opening, there's going to be some tunneling, and there will be some pods that will spawn in on the ceiling as you walk through. I think there's around 3 or 4, but you can see right here ahead of me, they just spawned in location, and you can just wait for them to explode and drop the enemies and see what you get. These ceiling spawns will drop badasses as well, but just not as frequently, and there's an area right behind me right here that I think is the best for this farming. The other entry point for the burrows is down on this end. I'll show you guys the map here. So you want the spawn point to put you here so that every time you quit out of the game, it puts you back in this location. This puts you in the perfect spot to just run into this arena, and you also have vending machines on your left. And this arena right here will give you 4 to 5 of these infected enemies. So make sure your game is saved right there so that when you quit out and come back, you'll just be running this short little path right here. So you're just gonna run up this bridge, and then on the left is where this arena will be, and you'll be getting these infected enemies along with sandworms. I also like this particular area because you don't have to fight through a lot of enemies to get to these badasses that you're looking for. All you have to do is run up on this open area. It's gonna spawn in some sandworms, and then you're gonna notice in the back that there will be some decaying pods coming out of the ground. You'll get like 2 or 3 at a time, and they do the same thing that the infected pods on the ceiling do. They mature and then explode and then drop these enemies. After these pods spawn in and explode, there'll be some more that spawn in right after that. So you can get around 4 to 5 enemies or maybe even more, and a lot of the times I do get these infected badass, and sometimes I'll get 2. Also in my game, it might have been possible for me to get even more of these infected enemies if I would have killed off those sandworms, because I saw those sandworms spitting at those pods and it might have actually destroyed some of them. So all the areas I showed you all have the same chance of dropping this weapon, but this is the best place because the respawn point is right around the corner and there's vending machines right there. Plus, you don't have to deal with a lot of enemies. The first location is not as great because of the logistics. You gotta get in a car to get to the location, and the vending machines are way far away. Plus, you gotta work through a ton of enemies to get to the ones you want. So for the Effervescent Nirvana, we don't know if it has some kind of special ability. We haven't figured that out yet. And as far as performance, its true strength lies in the elemental damage. The combination of the high fire rate, chance to ignite, and burn damage per second makes it an excellent weapon for dealing damage over time. But good luck to you guys if you're out there attempting to farm this thing. Again, you could be at it for a while, but I hope this helped you guys out, and we'll see you next video.